From the Foundation Studio right here on Biloxi's Back Bay, welcome to SuperTalk Outdoors, where we celebrate every single Monday at lunchtime the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi. And boy, am I happy to have One Mississippi as the theme song for SuperTalk Outdoors. Our friend Steve Azar, the music and cultural ambassador for the state of Mississippi, the singer-songwriter who had so much success in Nashville and then came back to Greenville, where he's from, and have written so many incredible songs about Mississippi. And now that song, One Mississippi, and appropriately so, I might add, is being strongly considered as the new state song for Mississippi. It passed the House of Representatives. It's in the Senate now and it's moving along. I'm so happy for Steve, and what an amazing song! What an amazing song! I hope you had a great Super Bowl weekend. It's another cool day here in coastal Mississippi, and I want to thank you, as I always do, for listening on the the powerful SuperTalk Mississippi Radio Network, or on SuperTalk TV at C Spire TV. But if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube or your favorite podcast, it is February the 14th, 2022. By the way, that's Valentine's Day, so hope that was on your radar screen. Happy Valentine's Day to you. Today on SuperTalk Outdoors, we're going to visit with Andy Gibson, the Mississippi Agricultural and Commerce Commissioner. We're also going to spend some time with Representative Trey Lamar. We'll come back to that in just a second. But first, I just wanted to remind you, we're going to change with the seasons here on SuperTalk Outdoors. But, I can't help but reflect a bit. It's amazing to me that deer and duck season flew by so quickly. I've said to some of my guests on Coast View recently that there's something about the pandemic that seemed to make the time go by quickly. I think the pandemic sped up time. But I should also point out that deer season still continues here in the southern zone of Mississippi. My friend Terry Waldrop, who hunts with me up in the Delta, left a couple of cellular cameras out, and every morning he sends pictures or videos of what we call survivors. Those are the bucks that made it. And it's kind of cool to see them before they drop their horns. And it bodes well for next season as we study those pictures. I know many of you are doing the same thing, and it actually gives us something to look forward to next year. As most of the serious deer hunters are doing, we've already sort of begun thinking about, what are the tweaks we want to make to the 3 farms that I lease up in the Mississippi Delta. And we're also doing some planning around duck season. I mean, it's a year-round activity. We all know that. But for people who don't understand hunting, I wish they could experience some of the full hunting experiences, which is during the off-season. I mean, we make so many memories. There are just so many activities that are happening, and the camaraderie there is just as fun and just as important as during the actual deer season. But it's true. Hunting is about the overall experience. I love what my friend Will Primo said about that. And here's what he said. The outdoor industry has given me a living, but it's deeper than that. I'm going to be in the woods by myself and pray and think about my relationship with God and family. Thank God for his grace and love and forgiveness. I get that from church, but this is an extension of that. It's so deep-seated. I don't have to pull the trigger, release the arrow, or catch a fish. It's the experience. Will's so right about that. It is about the experience. And he makes also a really good point. In a way, it's sort of like being in a prayer when we're in the outdoors, isn't it? And I think a lot of Mississippians really get that. And we are so fortunate, frankly, to live in the capital of the outdoors for the United States, right here in the great state of Mississippi. If you get on social media, what you'll find is that there are a lot of turkey hunters out there that are looking forward to the spring. It's just around the corner. One of my favorite quotes as it relates to the outdoors is from William Shakespeare, and he said this: "Earth has music for those who listen. Earth has music for those who listen." On the coast, that could be a seagull or a crashing wave. But that quote is also true, especially when you consider turkey hunting. There's nothing more exhilarating. I mean, when you hear in that moment that gobble, come on now, it doesn't get any better than that. That's something that most turkey hunters are literally coveting. They dream about it. I mean, you know that if you're a turkey hunter. I'm getting some good reports about swordfish and wahoos offshore. And if we can really get a stretch of no rain, hopefully we can get some redfish and specks back in the backwaters of coastal Mississippi. It was literally getting perfect before that rain a week or so ago. It killed the salinity. My fingers are crossed we don't get rain and we can get the salinity back to where it needs to be here in coastal Mississippi. Now let's move over to my friend, Representative Trey Lamar. Real quick, if you don't know Trey, he lives in Senatobia. He represents District 8, which includes parts of Tate and Lafayette counties. He's been in the House of Representatives since 2012. Some people describe him, and I have observed that he's a big-time leader in the House. I hear nothing but good things about Trey. He's the House Ways and Means Chairman, and he's an avid outdoor conservation leader in the legislature. He practices in a law firm that actually was started by his grandfather back in 2058. Name of the firm is Lamar and Hannaford. Anyway, without any further ado, let me just welcome Trey to Super Talk Outdoors. How you doing, my friend?
Ricky, I'm doing great. Really appreciate you having me on your show this morning. I've been a big fan for a while, but you know, being from North Mississippi, I never thought I'd get asked to be on the show from a coast show. But you really are statewide these days, and just thank you for the invitation. Look forward to this.
Well, actually, you know, you make a good point. While this is Super Talk Outdoors and it is statewide, I'd love to have you on Coast View at some point, and we can really zero in a little deeper into what the coast means to you, and even though you're being from Senatobia, your statewide view of how all the parts of the state fit together, which you really have to know as the Ways and Means Chairman, that is for sure. But this show is not going to be. This show is not about the legislature. As a general rule, it's not. But as I mentioned to you out the air, and as I've said many times here on Super Talk Outdoors, we're going to talk about why what happens in Jackson matters to outdoorsmen from time to time. And one of those situations is literally before the legislature as we speak, the Outdoors Stewardship Trust Fund. And we're going to come back to that in just a second. But let me share something with you. I talked to Trey before the show started, and I'd grabbed a few pictures off of Facebook of him and his kids together. And for the Facebook and YouTube and Super Talk TV audiences, I want to tell you, I'm just showing some pictures of Trey with his kids and some special moments in the outdoors with his kids. But as you look at those pictures, Trey, what does that mean to you to see those pictures?
Ricky, to me, it means, it really means everything. It's, you know, I don't want to, it's kind of hard to put in words, I guess, but the best way I know how to explain it is it's just real. I mean, that's who I am. That's who my family is. Those aren't any, you know, staged politician pictures that you see sometimes on push cards. I mean, that's real life stuff. My family and I, you know, we hunt during the season every week, every weekend, multiple times a week. I mean, that's just the way we live. I love the outdoors. Grew up loving the outdoors. About 10 years ago, my family, my parents, my dad and my mom, and myself kind of partnered up and bought invested in some new farmland, new for us at the time, and have since kind of had a family, just a way for us to kind of, I guess, preserve something for my children and my brother's children and our future generations to have a place that we always grew up hunting and fishing and outdoors. Both my mom and my dad come from an agricultural background with their parents and their families. And so it was a way for us to just do something together. And it's been a tremendous blessing over the last 10 years. We've been able to grow the farm and invest in it and continue to conserve our, you know, our what we call our family farm. We spend a lot of time out there, and whether it's hunting there, which our place is in the hills, it's got some row crop and some hay ground and some timber land, or whether, you know, we're about 10 minutes from the bluff, so you know most of the ducks like the flat land. So I've been duck hunting my entire life. It's just something we do on a regular basis. And more so than just the hunting. I mean, even when it's not hunt season, it's we're on a tractor or we're doing something outdoors. Mississippi is blessed with beautiful beautiful outdoor creation. I appreciate the intro you gave with talking about the just how God speaks to us through the outdoors. A little devotional meant a lot to me to hear you say that. So anyway, thank you for that. But that truly is that's who I am. That's who my family is, and that's who a lot of Mississippians are as well.
We'll continue our conversation with Representative Trey Lamar on the other side. We'll give an update on the Conservation Stewardship Trust Fund and talk a little bit more about the outdoors. We'll see you after this break.
Mississippi's Outdoors. It's SuperTalk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back to SuperTalk Outdoors. I have Representative Trey Lamar with us. And before we went to break, we were just talking about it. He made the point about this. I think that probably Will Primos's comment about how he gets this from church, but that this is even more than that. It's this opportunity. And the way I summarize it is simply being in the outdoors when you're quiet and you're in the moment. It's sort of like being in a prayer. It's a reminder of how first of all lucky we are as Mississippians to live here. It's a great chance to be with family and friends and whatever. But it is sort of the ultimate devotion, isn't it?
It really is. I was. And I just give you, sharing more than y'all want to know. But just this morning, during the session, I have to be in the Capitol many mornings, and I miss some of the mornings with my family. But this morning, I was able to be at home, and we normally try to have my wife she's a great leader with our children, and she normally every morning tries to have a devotional with them. And this morning, we had a devotional. It's usually at the breakfast table, and the topic came up after the devotion that one of my sons said, "I can't believe hunting season's over," and I echoed the same thing. And then it went right into, but turkey season's right around the corner. And my oldest son said, by the way, he hadn't killed one yet, but he's missed two. One of which he'll tell you he didn't miss because he found some feathers, and I tried to explain to him that's still a miss. But he said, "Daddy, we're gonna hunt every day turkey season this year." And he said, "And maybe on my birthday, will you let me miss school and hunt all day?" And I said, "Buddy, I don't know. We'll have to talk about that." But that was a conversation, from just a few hours ago this morning. So it's hard.
It's so awesome, man.
Yeah, turkey season will be here soon.
I'm doing the show from my studio here in Biloxi, and if I were to grab the camera and bring around what you would see is 100 rods and spear guns and dive equipment and ducks on the wall, and you know what I mean. It's an outdoor room, and I've often said, certainly this was true for me. It kept me out of trouble growing up, but the opportunity to share the outdoors with my two sons, one's a lawyer on the coast, one lives in New York now, and my daughter Tori, who is a teacher, the opportunity to share it with them, and now with my grandkids. I think it's going to provide the same opportunity for all of them that it did for me. It's sort of the glue that kept our family together, something to look forward to. Once you get it in your blood, it stays there. It becomes part of your DNA, and it's true, isn't it?
That's true. It's very true. And I know it is in my family, and I'm glad to hear the same for your family. But it's just part of who we are here in Mississippi.
Yeah.
Just love spending time outdoors. And anyway, I didn't realize till you said earlier you got a place in the Delta, so maybe I'll come check you out one day.
Well, we have hunting ground up in Shula,
okay,
and then the main camp is about 500 in the hills, 1,000 in the Delta, outside between Greenwood and Blackhawk, and then we have another farm that we lease over in Mentor City, and it's special. We're very diverse. Any aspect of hunting you can enjoy it with us. But it's a lot of work and it's a lot of fun. I retired now 6 years ago and do this show, I call it maybe semi-retired now, but But it's a great opportunity for me to be able to have something to do. And having even if we just leasing the farm for hunting rights, there's always a lot of work to do. That's for sure, isn't there?
Always something to do. There's no doubt about it. I've got a to-do list in my mind a mile long, and my dad has his own to-do list, and most of the time ours don't match up, but that's okay. So he's giving me things to do. But it's part of it, and it's enjoyable. It's kind of therapy for me. I get out of the law office and get away from this desk and computer and get outside, and I can actually think out there. So it's helpful.
Well, my career was in the digital media world, and that's the same way I talk about it as well. Hey, let's shift gears. What I have said about this year's legislative session is one of the most consequential in our history because of the amount of federal money that's come in and the fact that Mississippi's economic situation has been better. You have led the charge on eliminating the income tax, and we're not going to talk about that now. But the reality is that there's a lot of noise in the legislature, and the noise, I'm not saying that's a negative thing. I'm just saying that means that there are a lot of priorities, a lot of conflicting objectives. Governor's got his goals, lieutenant governor's got his goals. Of course, the speaker's got his goals, and that's part of, people sometimes are frustrated by that, but the legislative process is what it is for a reason. And so here we are. But one of the bills that's trying to make it through is the Outdoors Stewardship Trust Fund. It passed the House last year, 117-2. It passed this year, essentially two versions, but essentially the same thing. Passed the House 117-4. What happened last year is the bill got triple referred in the Senate, which is the same thing as essentially saying it was intended to kill the bill. But what came out was a stripped down version of the House bill. And so there were some really important elements that were missing. And let me just real quickly review those three things. First of all, it went to essentially what was going to be an appropriation. No money was in the bill, but it would have been an annual appropriation, which is really hard to do when you're talking about multi-year projects. It's very difficult if you don't have a dedicated funding source to do multi-year projects. Most conservation efforts are multi-year. Second, it took out non-governmental organizations like the Nature Conservancy, Wildlife Mississippi, Ducks Unlimited, a large number of them. You want the entire conservation community at the table when you're doing conservation. They can help you find federal funds. They can help find private funds. There's a lot of matching funds involved in this. And thirdly, it took private lands out. Somewhere between 80 and 90% of Mississippi is private land. It's almost impossible to do conservation in Mississippi without doing it on private land. Those are the three major components of the Senate bill that are different, and they're in some respects, for the most part, pretty much showstoppers if we are going to be serious about conservation in this state. Mississippi is one of two states in the Southeast that does not have a conservation trust fund, a dedicated fund. Louisiana, it looks like they're going to get one soon, so we may be last here. And so there's a lot of missed opportunities in terms of federal matching funds. In the case of Georgia, for example, they turned $20 million into nearly $100 million. What we're missing out on in terms of federal matching cannot be understated. This is a really important part of this. But at the end of the day, we all have to get on the same page about having a dedicated funding source for conservation in this state. And you've been pretty committed to that, haven't you, Trey?
I certainly have. And I think I've made comments. I know I've made comments on multiple occasions publicly from the well of the House and other places that this legislation, Outdoor Stewardship Program, is an opportunity for us to make really transformational changes to the way the state of Mississippi handles stewardship and conservation of our outdoor assets. And anybody that really knows what they're talking about in this landscape knows you cannot talk about conservation and limit it only to public lands. That debate has already been had years and years and years ago, and it was settled at the federal level. And so we really shouldn't even be having that debate again here in Mississippi, because the programs that the federal government funds, such as CSP, the Conservation Stewardship Program, or CRP or WRP, all these federal programs that so many of our Mississippian landowners participate in are just that. They're conservation programs funded through federal tax dollars, and they're for the purposes of conservation. And you have to have, when 90% of the land is privately owned, you can't have a conversation about conservation without also including conservation on private lands. It's like saying you're going to buy a car, but you're against buying gas to put it in the tank. I mean, it makes no sense. And so although I respect certainly some of my Senate colleagues who've taken that position, I welcome them to reconsider that position, because it's just nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense. That position, what I'm saying does not mean I'm against fixing our public parks. I'm gonna have a separate bill this year that will spend state money on much needed repairs and upgrades we have at our public parks. We need to do that, but we also need to pass the conservation stewardship bill and have a dedicated funding stream for conservation on public and private lands in this state, because that's really the only way to do conservation correctly. So that said, let me tell your listeners a little bit about the differences. The Senate has come back and said, well, we're against diversions. Well, that's not true. We've got a lot of diversions all across our state budget. We divert money to cities and education and so many other things. I tell you what, you look like you're at a break, so maybe we can come back and we'll talk about that point a little bit more.
Okay, we will. Let's come back after this break, and we'll finish this point, and then we'll move over to Andy Gibson and have a good visit with him. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. We have Trey Lamar, Representative Trey Lamar, and we're talking about the Outdoors Stewardship Trust Fund. And when we went to break, you were mentioning, Trey, about this notion around having an issue with diversion. Let's pick it up from there.
Yeah, I just want the listeners to understand the difference between what the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund bill does. Creates a diversion from existing sales tax at sporting goods stores, versus what the Senate has proposed in funding that through an appropriation. A dedicated income stream through a diversion is just that. It's dedicated. It's there. You would have to have an act of law to change it, and it's automatic every year. We do that throughout our budget on things that are priorities, on things that are important. And I and the House leadership and the vast majority of the House, and I think your viewers would believe or do believe and would support a dedicated funding stream for these conservation efforts. It helps you plan, but maybe more importantly, it also ensures that it's going to be there. I have no idea who's going to be sitting in my seat 6 years from now, 10 years from now, in Speaker Gunn's seat 10 years from now. I don't know who's going to be the lieutenant governor. I can't promise you who's going to be the governor. I have no idea. I certainly don't know who's going to be the appropriation chairman in the House and the Senate. And so when you have a dedicated funding stream, it ensures that funding stream is going to be there in perpetuity. If you do it with an appropriation, it is subject to the whim and pleasure of whatever politician is sitting in that appropriation chairman's seat every single year. If we don't do it with a dedicated funding stream, you could have a politician sitting there as the chairman of the Senate Senate Appropriations or House Appropriations Committee 10 years from now, and they may decide to spend that money on Medicaid. It may be a down budget year, and it could go to Medicaid, or it could go to paying state employees. I mean, and we just don't have the funding that year. This is outdoor stewardship. This is a big deal, and it should not be subject to the whim and pleasure of whatever individual is sitting as chairman of the appropriations from here on out. There are times that we need an appropriation, obviously every year. This, however, is different. This is something that is important to all Mississippians, and it's so important that we need to make sure it receives a dedicated funding stream going forward. So that's why we're fighting so hard to have a diversion fund this. The Stewardship Trust Fund in perpetuity.
Trey, I appreciate your time with me. Before we move over to Andy Gibson, let me just summarize a couple of really important points that you made. First of all, as it relates to private land, if you look at the list of federal money, and it's a long list, The most significant amount of money, over $7 billion on the federal level, is actually in the Farm Bill, and that's all private land. So if we decide to exclude private land, what we're saying is that the most significant area where there's the most amount of money, we're going to take it off the table. That doesn't make any sense. Second,
Right.
as it relates to the diversion and having a dedicated funding source, the reality, as I said a few minutes ago, most conservation efforts are multi-year projects. You can't, they're not one and done. It takes years to do it. How do you sign up for a long-term, impactful program with matching funds if you can't be sure from one year to the next that money's actually going to be there? This has to be part of the conversation. Anyway, Trey, it's been a pleasure to spend some time with you, man. I really appreciate you. Now we're going to move over to my friend Andy Gibson. Good afternoon, Andy. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Ricky?
I'm doing really good. Hey, look, we're gonna get into the rodeo and other things going on in your life today. But you heard what we were just talking about, the Outdoors Stewardship Trust Fund, and the fact that we're still not where we need to be. The Senate wants to exclude private land. They don't want to have a dedicated funding source. They want to exclude non-governmental organizations from being participants in the program. Have you been given much thought to this?
Well, yeah, absolutely. As you know, I live on a farm in rural Mississippi in Simpson County, and we live and breathe hunting and fishing on our farm. And I think if you visit most farms in this state, you'll find the same thing, that farmers love and are the number one stewards of the outdoors. I've got a map behind me of all the cropland farms in Mississippi. And as you see, the state of Mississippi is farms and forest lands, and that light green is woods and pasture, and the others row crops all over the state. So agriculture and the outdoors go hand in hand. And I've always said in speeches around the state, farmers are the original conservationists. And in fact, federal policy recognizes that, because the Farm Bill, as you know, is packed full of concepts to help conserve wildlife, habitat, and our precious natural resources. So I support the concepts that have been going around in the legislature the last couple of years for that stewardship fund. And I'm certainly hopeful that the legislature will pass something this year. Certainly believe that it will, and am hopeful for that.
Well, we're talking to Andy Gibson, who's the Agriculture and Commerce Commissioner for the state of Mississippi. Andy, one of the points that I made, and you heard me make it just before we moved from Trey to you, but this notion that there are a large number, I have the list, and it's a very long list of federal funds that are available to us in a matching scenario. And I think one of the things that we have to understand is, number one on that list is the Farm Bill, over $7 billion available for matching. If you exclude essentially somewhere near 90% of the land in Mississippi from being participants in a conservation effort, well, not only are you not going to get that money from the Farm Bill, but you're really not taking the right steps toward trying to keep Mississippi the capital of the outdoors in the U.S. You can't do conservation without including all land in that conversation, can you?
That's right. Farmers are taxpayers. We pay probably more taxes than anybody else, to be truthful about it, starting with the land taxes that we own. And those taxes are all collected by the state. They're used for some purpose. And obviously, as is clear in the Farm Bill, the federal policy is designed to promote conservation on farms, and to make sure that some of those resources are returned to conservation efforts, habitat management, wildlife, forestry on the farm. And it makes perfect sense that, a lot of other states have done something like this. Why wouldn't Mississippi to go along with that policy? And whether you're talking about the CRP program through the Farm Service Administration, whether you're talking about the Conservation Stewardship Program through the NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, what you could be talking about some of the matching grants that are regionally that are designated by the Farm Bill to states or other political subdivisions to help promote habitat. And all of that's on private lands. Some of it is also for public lands, but I don't see any reason to exclude the tax-paying farmers who bear a large load of the tax burden in this state on every level. Why would we exclude them? I don't understand that.
The Lieutenant Governor, Delbert Hosemann, has been quoted as saying that he wants to focus on parks first, but the way most of the people that I talk to see it, parks and conservation are not the same thing, and they should not be mutually exclusive. You could go fix the parks, but don't make conservation of Mississippi wait until the parks are fixed. We'll understand more what he means and what his intentions are as it relates to that. But Alex Littlejohn from the Nature Conservancy was on my show Coast View a week ago. One of the points that he made is that when they did an analysis of matching dollars that were coming back to the states, and look at the Southeast, we're one of only 2 states that don't have a dedicated fund. The other is Louisiana. Looks like they soon will have one. So essentially, we may be last again, unfortunately, on a topic where we should be the leaders in the United States. But anyway, when you look at the amount of matching funds that are coming back, millions are coming back to the states, only 300,000 to Mississippi. Right. Over the last several years, we've missed out on an enormous amount of federal matching funds, and it adds up over the years, doesn't it, Andy?
It does. And, we're in the youth development business of the Department of Agriculture and Commerce. We have the livestock shows, 4-H, FFA. We just had an all-time record sale of champions of these young people raising their livestock on the farms. These same young people want to get out and hunt and fish, and they want to conserve the habitat and the wildlife resources of our state. And we're missing out for them, for the future of hunting and fishing in this state, on some of these programs that would easily serve as matching dollars to do projects to raise quail. I mean, I grew up quail hunting, and you can hardly find quail anymore because we just haven't had a focused effort on that habitat management. It's a need, it's out there. That's just one example. You could apply it to deer, turkey, everything else, but it's all happening on the farm, and our young people are there. And I think I've been to other states who have programs like this, and I've seen the investment it's made in their life. I think it's a really good investment.
If you look at the Farm Bill, and we're coming to the end of this segment together, from 1985, the most successful aspect of that from a wildlife habitat point of view has been CRP and WRP. For the average hunter who's trying to understand what this means, just think of CRP that you're aware of, or WRP that you're aware of, and think about the habitat aspects of that. That's what the Farm Bill has done. That's what Mississippi wants to do, but in so many different forms. We want to be innovative about this. We want to bring all the conservation partners, both governmental and non-governmental, together and challenge them to find matching funds, to find private funds, to find those projects that put Mississippi on the cutting edge. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Andy Gibson, the Agriculture and Commerce Commissioner for the state of Mississippi.
We live in one of the best places in America to enjoy the outdoors. So let's talk about it. It's Super Talk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I have Andy Gibson with me. He's the Agriculture and Commerce Commissioner for the state of Mississippi. And before we went to a break, we were just sort of agreeing on a lot of important points as it related to the Outdoors Stewardship Trust Fund. But before we move on, I want to talk about the rodeo and see how that's going, et cetera. Do you know of any good examples of where the legislature has passed legislation that, from a conservation point of view, that actually applied to private land?
Well, yes. In fact, since I've been commissioner, one of the first things that I recognized as taking office as Ag Commissioner in 2018 was the devastating effect of these hogs all over the state, all 82 counties, millions of dollars of damage in habitat and agricultural production that go hand in hand. So we went to the legislature in 2020 and proposed a bill, and it passed, and it created the Wild Hog Control Program that the Department of Agriculture now has the authority to go and help farmers and landowners on private agriculture and forestry lands to control these nuisance animals, trap them. We actually have a convoy of traps that we will deliver and set up and teach the farmer how to use. And we've trapped thousands of these hogs, and farmers know what to do with them after that. But these things are a devastating threat to agriculture and wildlife conservation. And I think it's a good example of how you can deploy resources to address a problem, and we can do that same thing to help make better habitat and better opportunities for future hunters and fishermen.
Wildlife don't know property lines. At the end of the day, they don't know them. Hey, listen, we'll shift gears real quick. You're a farmer, a lawyer, a minister, you're farmer state representative. It's got to be awesome for you to be, and the fact that you're in the position you're in today, is that a dream job for you?
It really is. And I have no doubt the Lord put me here, and the people of Mississippi certainly, and I want to do the best job I can do. And I feel like, looking back, I could never have predicted this. I never thought I would be here, but looking back, I can see how all the steps along the way of my life, growing up on the farm, moving back to the family farm, building my own house there on the farm, and raising our family on the farm, hunting and fishing, and the conservation efforts that we've made, all those things prepared me for this. And I'm having a time as your Commissioner of Agriculture and Commerce, and just love it. And the rodeo's in town, so it's a great job. It's a wonderful opportunity to serve the people of the state and our state's largest industry as well.
The rodeo's big, isn't it?
It is. The rodeo, this is the largest rodeo, the Dixie National Rodeo, largest rodeo east of the Mississippi River. And it's going on right now. We're taking a break today, Monday. It's Valentine's Day, and tomorrow, Tuesday, but we'll kick it back up Wednesday, run all the way through Saturday. We've had 2 weekends this year, tremendous turnout, record attendance. We're really excited, and I hope you'll join us at the Dixie National.
Well, listen, hey, by the way, I'm watching 1883, which is the prequel to the Yellowstone on Paramount, and they've really worked really hard to make it true to history, et cetera. And I think that a lot of people watching that, it's going to restore a lot of people's interest in what the rodeo is all about.
The rodeo professionals, PRCA officials that have been involved with the Dixie National told me the same thing the other day, that they've seen a resurgence of interest in the things of the original pioneers of America, the Wild West, the days of the settlers. And I think all of that's because of the programs you're talking about. Yellowstone, 1883. Bring it on. Y'all come on down to the Dixie National.
Well, the more the merrier. It's about getting back to our roots. And this is such an important part of our root in the discovery of America and what's sort of at the core of America. And that's true, to sort of close out this segment. Mississippi is the capital of the outdoors. I say it every single week on this show. When you think about the saltwater fishing off our coast and backwaters of coastal Mississippi and the Mississippi Delta and Northeast Mississippi and what happens in central Mississippi, deer season continues on in the southern zone of Mississippi, some of the best turkey hunting in the world all over the state of Mississippi. We are so fortunate to live here, aren't we?
We really are. We're blessed with so many wonderful natural resources. We have such a diverse soil in this state that we really grow anything worth growing, and we grow it better than anybody else. And that includes our natural resources, habitat for wildlife. And, we have a lot of good things going here. We can take it to the next level by adopting this conservation stewardship program. And I really am excited about the prospect that the legislature is going to get it done in 2022.
Hey, what we'll do, I want to invite you to be part of my show on the coast called Coast You. And I'll spend an hour with you talking about where you came from, your love of Mississippi, how coastal Mississippi sort of fits into your sphere of influence as the Agriculture, Commerce, and Commissioner. And I look forward to that. But it's been a pleasure catching up with you, man. Thank you for your passion on the Outdoors Stewardship Trust Fund. The politics are right. The policy is right. The legislation is right. And now is the time. Mississippi has to be a leader. We can't wait another year. We have to get this done this year. The final word, buddy.
We're ready. Thank you for having me. We'll see you soon.
You bet. This has been Andy Gibson. We'll see you next Monday. Have a great day and stay safe. Stay safe in the outdoors.